Well, hey, welcome back to another HC Conversations podcast, part of Hope Community here at Minerva, Ohio, where our mission as a church is to make disciples of Jesus who are transformed by truth, sent on mission, and who live together in unity. And as we say it all the time, our goal with this podcast is that it would help you on your discipleship to Jesus by being transformed by the truth of His Word. I'm Paul.
I'm Phil.
And we're in a little bit different of a location today. We decided to try just sitting up here on the stage where we normally, preach and lead worship.
And
so
makes the tech aspect a little simpler.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes, and
maybe
we'll stick with it, maybe we'll change it.
Well, that's right. All right, well, hey, everybody, it's the day after Easter.
Mm-hmm. Easter Monday, if you're
it.
Canadian. I think that's like on the calendar as a Canadian holiday.
Is it really?
Yeah,
well,
because the kids are talking about it.
I'm not Canadian.
I'm not either.
But it is still the Monday after Easter, and we had a great Resurrection Sunday yesterday, and just honestly, we don't have a whole lot to talk about with the podcast in terms of additional content, but we just want to chat about a couple of things, and so, it was a great day yesterday, Paul.
It was a great weekend.
It was a great weekend.
From Friday night, I'll skip over my Saturday until Sunday.
Why? What happened on your Saturday?
Well, my basement flooded for the third time
in
the last week.
Yeah.
So we'll just skip over that. Let's go from Friday to Sunday.
We're gonna skip Silent Saturday. It was a Saturday of mourning for Paul in his wet basement.
Hopefully you got that problem figured out now.
Yeah. Anyway, back to...
But a great weekend because we had just an incredible Good Friday night of worship here at the church.
Really
packed out room, 2 packed out services yesterday here. It was a record weekend for us as a church in terms of number of attendees. And then we also, yesterday, we celebrated people going public with their faith through baptism.
Yeah, buddy.
And that was my favorite part of the morning. I mean, I teared up at the testimonies, and I'm like thinking about them, and starting to get a little
tear up again,
little verklempt.
A what?
Verklempt, suddenly overcome with emotion.
Did you prepare to use that word in this podcast? Because I am impressed that is at the tip of your tongue. Verklempt? Am I saying that right?
Verklempt.
With a PT at the end?
Yes.
Verklempt.
Verklempt.
Somebody check him. Is that a real word? Because it sounds like you're Mr. Make Things Up today.
All right, I'll check it.
Well, if it is a real word, I've been verklempt as well, just thinking about all that God kind of did here over the course of the weekend. We had said in preparation for this, we've been asking for prayer, and as we think about the future of our church and space, we're probably going to be pushing between Good Friday night of worship and 2 Easter services, close to 300 people coming through here. And some of that was overlap. Some people came to Good Friday and to an Easter service. But yeah, we were up around 280 plus. So it was a great weekend. Oh, I anticipated it being spelled with a C, but it's with a K. Verklempt. Verklempt.
Yeah, probably German.
It's a Yiddish-derived adjective meaning overcome with emotion, choked up, or clenched with feeling. Are you clenched?
Clenched with feeling.
I'm so clenched with feeling right now. Oh, but it was awesome. And really, yesterday in particular, it's Easter, so it's all about the resurrection of Jesus. Yeah. And we talked about that. And we talked about how 1 Corinthians 15 is to me, it is the place to go if you are wanting to know, okay, what is the gospel? Obviously, the gospel is alluded to and talked about and foreshadowed all throughout the Old Testament and stuff and what God would do through Christ. It's reflected upon in the New Testament. You see it lived out in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But if you're send me to one place, one reference in the Scripture where I can find it in a condensed form, to me that's 1 Corinthians 15.
Yeah.
And the Apostle Paul is... he just lays it out, I didn't cover all the verses, but he begins in 1 Corinthians 15. He says, "Let me remind you, my dear brothers and sisters, the good news," or gospel. That's literally what gospel means. "That I preached to you before. You welcomed it then, and you still stand firm in it. It is the good news that saves you if you continue to believe the message I told you, unless, of course, you believe something that was never true in the first place." Right? So, just that idea of, Paul said, I preach this good news, this gospel to you, and this is something that you need to stand firm in it and continue in it. And so for us to you never graduate from the gospel in the Christian faith. And again, this is where you find it most condensed, but it's all over the place in the scripture. And so it's like, continue in this, live in this, know this deeper throughout your life. And so, yeah, man.
Yeah, I think that's one of the criticisms that can get lobbed at churches, at pastors, is that, you don't ever go deep. And it's like you talk about the gospel all the time.
There's nothing
and
deeper than the gospel.
There is nothing deeper than the gospel. It is
Nothing.
the central core of the entire Bible. The entire Bible points to Jesus, to the good news about Jesus. Yeah. And so we're plumbing the depths when we talk about the gospel. We're spelunking.
You just got the words today. We're plumbing the depths. We're spelunking. We're kerplump. It went verklempt.
Verklempt.
Yeah, and even 1 Corinthians 15, I think, we're rolling through an Easter service. I mean, we could spend weeks on 1 Corinthians 15, but I'm just kind of hitting like the big themes. But there's so much in it that we didn't even get into. I mean, the first thing kind of being that I wanted to touch on, it kind of got cut out, was just the fact that he says this is what's most important, that Christ died for our sins. So the initial opening of his message of the gospel begins with Christ, which, it's not Jesus' last name, it's his title. It's the Greek version of the Hebrew concept of Messiah, which means anointed one, and really anointed king. That the gospel is a message about a king and about a kingdom and about a king who came and died for his would-be subjects, right? And a king who died to bring people into his kingdom. And just that concept of that anointed, promised king getting picked up, again, all the way back to in the Old Testament, right? Yeah. Going back to the snake crusher and going back to the promise. As we've been in the series that we took a break from for Easter, but of the biblical storyline, snake crusher, descendant of Abraham. If you're reading through the Bible in a year right now, you've been spending a lot of time hearing about David, such a key figure in terms of this king in the line of David that's coming. So, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things that you mentioned briefly yesterday is that this section that we're reading from, 1 Corinthians 15, is it's a creed of the early church. That what Paul is referring to is already a statement that was being transmitted in the early church from the earliest days of the resurrection, that this statement got formulated and it was being passed around. That this is kind of like, here's how you remember the gospel. And then they went down through this simple, easy to remember statement. As you read it, you can kind of pick up on some of the cadence.
Yeah,
and
depending
rhythm
on what
to
translation you're reading. And it does have a dun da 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 da. Okay, maybe not that, but yeah, it does. Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures. He was buried. He was raised on the third day according to the scriptures. He was seen. And yeah, it's really cool that, that's one of those things too. we think about Easter, we think about the Christian faith. It is so historical in nature. This is not like other faith traditions around the world. It's like, well, here are some things to believe, or here are some teachings that can just kind of float around. Like Christianity is specifically rooted in the person in the work of Jesus, but who Jesus is and what he did is tied to a specific time and place and events, the death and the resurrection. And so as it's recorded, I think that does two things. Number one, it makes it very concrete and very trustworthy. But at the same time, it opens it up to falsification, or Christianity could be undermined and written off if you could prove that these things didn't happen. And so what is one of the greatest strengths of Christianity, the fact that it is historically rooted, could be its weakness, except for the fact that no one's ever been able to disprove it. And coming into something like 1 Corinthians and 1 Corinthians 15 actually adds to that. I mentioned that just quickly that 1 Corinthians was written somewhere around the mid-50s, depending on what scholarship you're looking at, like 53 to 55. It's about 20 years after the events of the death and resurrection of Jesus. And people are like, 20 years, that's a long time. It's really not at all. Like in terms of, especially in terms of historical documentation, right. We know more about Jesus. We have more manuscripts from the New Testament closer to the original date by like a magnitude of 10x than any other historical figure. I mean, and we have no problem believing in Julius Caesar or Alexander the Great or all. And there's far less evidence. farther away, but something like the New Testament and something here like 1 Corinthians, 20 years after the resurrection. That is crazy.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is because we find it very easy to believe things like kings conquering other nations, and generals conquering other nations, and armies going to war, because that's normal everyday life for most societies. We read stories about it, we see movies made about it, but when it comes to the death and resurrection, people die all the time. Everybody dies. But people do not come back from the dead.
That's right.
And so that's the thing that causes people to have so many questions and hang-ups, is the fact that I can't believe that a man would come back from the dead.
And I think sometimes people will, and forgive me if I'm putting words in your mouth if you're watching this and you're skeptical, I think sometimes people will question, because of how crazy the claim is, like somebody came back from the dead, and so, well, I don't believe it because of the claim, even though the evidence would suggest that the best explanation is he actually came back from the dead. But I think the reason why so many people are hesitant, compared to we know less about these other kings and generals and nobody questions them, is because I can believe in the historical veracity of Alexander the Great's life, and it does not affect me at all.
Yep.
But the moment I go, oh no, Jesus really lived, was crucified, and rose from the dead, if I accept that as true, I can't just sit on that and be like, oh, cool, it's just a historical fact like Alexander the Great, or something. I have to submit to this because he really is God, and what he has revealed in his word really is true. And so that has implications for everything about my life. And so it's a lot more comfortable to sit in the place of maybe agnosticism, to say, well, I don't really know, Jesus was a cool guy, I don't really want to think about it, or a skepticism that says, well, that can't possibly be true, when a lot of times it's really not about evidence, it's more about implication. I don't want that to be true. And there's a lot of people, actually, pretty well-known people throughout history, even just in the last 100 years, who began with, I don't believe that. Let me go out to prove that it's not true. And then they realized, oh no, this is true. Probably most famously C.S. Lewis, being like, yeah, this is true. Or some more modern people, they're still alive, and they've written books on it, would be somebody like Elise Strobel. We actually just watched the movie based on his life, and then the book that he wrote, The Case for Christ. If you don't know Elise Strobel's story, it's pretty cool. He was a Chicago Tribune reporter, and his wife started following Jesus, and he absolutely hated that because he was an atheist. And he's like, I'm going to prove this wrong so she can get out of this cult. And then he investigated using his investigative reporter skills, and he was like, oh no, this is true.
And the same goes for Nicky Gumbel.
Nicky!
Of the Alpha Course, HTB in London.
He was a barrister.
He was a barrister, which is
a lawyer.
A lawyer.
He was a lawyer.
And so he set out to prove his friend wrong, Nicky Lee, the other Nicky.
Yeah, if you've done the Alpha pre-marriage course, that Nicky.
Who had become a Christian. So he started reading the Gospels and realized it was true. And he used his investigative skills as a lawyer to investigate the truth claims of the Gospels and realized it was true.
Another one would be J. Warner Wallace. So he was a cold case homicide detective that did not start off as a Christian, and he used his, he pretty well known during kind of like the heyday of his detective career. I think he'd been on some episodes of 60 Minutes and stuff, solving homicides that were, decades old. And how do you put together the events of something? So he took those same skills and brought them to the Gospels, and now he's a Christian and talks about that and has written books on that. So the point being, we follow an evidentiary faith. We have sources that are really, really close to when these things happen. In fact, sometimes people will they'll go to the Gospels first to be like, well, there's this gap, and the earliest gospel is Mark, and the ending of Mark is a little hazy on the resurrection, and so that will be used as kind of like proof text against the resurrection. But what most people don't realize is the Gospels aren't the oldest New Testament documents.
They just come first.
They happen to come first because they tell us about Jesus, but the oldest things we have are some of the things written by the Apostle Paul.
Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I want to say is it 1 Thessalonians?
I honestly don't know.
I don't know. I don't quote me on that, because off the top of my head, I don't know, and I'm questioning that now. I know that 1 Corinthians is one of the very early ones. Again, we're talking 20 years. And within these letters that Paul wrote, within, again, just a 2 decades. It's like resurrection is all over the place. And then knowing, back to our original point, circling around, that this section of 1 Corinthians, this isn't 20 years after the resurrection. This is, scholars say, 2 to 5 years maybe. Yeah. And really, it probably dates back further than that. That's just how far, it's like we can kind of accurately determine in its official form, being passed down, maybe being written places, 2 to 5 years after the resurrection. Basically saying, there has been no point in the history of Christianity where the primary belief of the church was not that Jesus was literally the Son of God, fully human, that he lived among us, that he taught, that he did miracles, that he died on a Roman cross under Pontius Pilate, and that he rose from the dead and was seen by hundreds of people. This is always what the church, and I don't say like, sometimes people are like, oh yeah, the church, they put this, like, I'm just talking about Christians, not this big institutionalized thing, but this is always what Christians have believed from the first generation of disciples. Literally, the women at the tomb, the 12 apostles, like this is what they've always believed. And it's remarkable when you think about it. It's actually, I think, one of the best evidences for the validity of the Christian faith. What's remarkable is how unchanged it has been and how it even got out of the first century. Yeah. I mean, in the early days, they were facing pressure from the temple, like the Jewish people in and around Jerusalem, facing persecution there, and also the Roman Empire. Like there was this squeeze from both sides, and the Christians they had no power, they had no influence, they had no authority, and yet somehow they changed the world. Like, and people can't do that on their own. This was, the message of the cross and the empty tomb. And so, again, that's all laid out in 1 Corinthians 15. I mean, not all that. That was some expansion on that. But Paul goes through, and he's like, okay, Christ crucified, buried, risen, seen. And then it actually continues on through, and he talks about some more of the implications of that, of if that's not true, go home. There's no point in doing this Christian thing. It's worthless, but it is true. And then he gets into, we didn't cover these parts yesterday, but he talks about the ascension of Christ too, like his exaltation, seated at the right hand of the Father, and he is going to return, and all things will be put under his feet. Like, so it's just such a rich passage, and the implications then for us as Christians, that imagery of first fruits. Could have spent a lot of time there, just kind of breeze past it, where it's like, these are people who, some of them are Jewish, some pagan, but they're familiar with bringing offerings to a temple, that you bring the first fruit, and it's this sign of, it's Thanksgiving, it's worship, saying, this is the first that was produced, but we recognize that more is coming. And like that, and the only thing that separates the first fruits from the harvest is just time. It's just time. And so what a cool picture that's given for those of us whose faith is in Christ, of saying, Christ is the first fruits of resurrection. There will be a harvest. The only thing separating it is time. Yep. Right? Just waiting for the harvest day, man.
Yep. So we eagerly await Jesus' return, knowing that just as he was resurrected, that he will also return. Because he proved it by being raised from the dead. He proved that he is, as we've been singing this weekend, I'll sing of your faithfulness. I'll tell of your promises.
I've seen it. I've witnessed it. Yeah.
And we have the eyewitness testimony here in the New Testament. So go ahead and read through 1 Corinthians, all of chapter 15 this week. And just sit in the truth there.
It's a long section, but let me encourage you, if you are in a community group, before you guys begin your discussion, just sit and read through, take turns, break it up, do bump like you're in school, bump to whoever, but read all of chapter 15 in its entirety to hear all of kind of what Paul is saying and the implications of what he's saying. Because, it does inform, Paul, as you were saying, not just, okay, this happened, but singing of his faithfulness. And oh gosh, every time that Tiffany sang that song, what did I hear? 3 times, and we heard it on Good Friday and then twice on Sunday. More than that, actually.
Yeah, with rehearsals.
Y'all, if you're part of our church, you don't understand this. We're now on tangent, but I feel like it's a tangent episode. How good our worship team is. They only practice, we get together on Sunday mornings. That's it. There's no practices during the week. But See, I know when there's new songs coming up because, I'm in here buzzing around Sunday morning and you guys are warming up. I'm like, there's a new song coming up in like 2 months and I can't wait till we do it. I can't wait till we do it because they're just crushing it. And I've heard Tiffany singing that song for like
3 weeks. We pulled that one together in 3 weeks because the one that we were going to
We
do.
did early.
We did early because it's like,
So we were going to do.
we're ready. What's keeping us from doing this today?
Because originally we were going to do Who Else
Yeah.
for Easter, but there was a Sunday like a month or so ago. It was like,
No, we got to do it
we
today.
got to do this song today. And so anyway, these songs, like I've been hearing them for a while. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to gather as a church and to sing this together and to sing this together. Anyway, back to it. Like the theme of that song, like I've witnessed it. I've witnessed your faithfulness, and I'm gonna witness to my family and my community and everybody around. I'm gonna tell of like the Lord's faithfulness, that idea and that kind of that bridge towards the end. Like the resurrection of Jesus, it has those implications for today. Like that there is a harvest coming, and as we talked yesterday, there is a new family line or family tree that you're grafted into, and there's still the opportunity for multitudes of people to be brought into that family. And speaking of the harvest, with Jesus is like, hey, the harvest is plentiful. It is like the harvest fields. Right. Go out, go tell people. And so, man, the reality of the resurrection is not just like, oh, cool, this is a doctrinal truth that we believe. It's like, no, this is how we live. Resurrection is our life, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to transition into the next part, what we celebrated yesterday with baptisms and getting to hear people's story of how Jesus has changed their life, and just the spectrum of people that got baptized yesterday.
Yeah, it was so cool.
Yeah, it was incredible. So we had one lady who grew up Catholic, kind of felt like she was going through the motions, began coming here and found a real Jesus and a real relationship with him.
Yeah.
She started doing the things that we encourage people to do, the next steps, reading the Bible, getting in a group, serving. And over time, those things have resulted in life change for her. And she talked about that yesterday.
And that's a thread that I have picked up on over our past couple of baptism Sundays. People are like, I got into the amount of times that my group, my community group that I'm a part of has been so crucial to my journey of faith. In taking a step to serve or doing those things. Our faith comes alive when we actually engage with it, not when we just sit and like hear and consume. Yeah. Like it's great. That's how it happens. It's
and so there's a reason why we talk about next steps and why we try to get people to take specific next steps.
Everybody has a next step.
Because we have seen them over and over, God work through them to transform people's lives.
And I think so much of it is because every next step, whether big or small, it pushes you into initially an area of discomfort. And we grow when we're not comfortable. Yeah. Right. That's the same with like our muscle growth too. It's like it's only by getting uncomfortable and then as a result of that uncomfortability, sore, that we experience growth. And so when you take that step to like, it's really, I want to go to somebody's house or come here to the church and sit with 10 to 12 people that I don't really know. We're going to talk about the Bible and we're going to pray. I'm so uncomfortable. God's going to grow you. Yep. You step into serving when you don't feel equipped or ready. God's going to grow you. You begin reading the scriptures and building like a prayer life. God's going to grow you. And then, especially that community aspect. When there's other people that are kind of pushing on you, what are you learning? What's God doing in your life? How can I pray for you? Yeah, we've seen that over and over and over again.
Yeah, and just one of the beauties is just that slow obedience and transformation, that it wasn't an overnight transformation. We heard one of those. We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
But just, again, dedicating your life to pursuing Jesus.
Right. Like, so she was a great example, of like, grew up Catholic and pretty involved in the Catholic Church, and then been part of Hope Community for 5+ years. Yeah. It's like, so I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with something. I don't remember what it was. Was it the last podcast? It doesn't matter. Where it's like not everyone's story is the same, but everybody has a story, and share that story. Let people see that because there's somebody else that's going to resonate with that. God's going to use what He's doing in you to do something in other people as well. So we had that picture that was like, hey, I kind of went from this kind of almost like a cold religious duty to Jesus is real. He's doing stuff in my life. And then we'll swing to the other end of things, and we heard the story of a young man, 16, 17 years old, who's like, My story was one of addiction with drugs and alcohol, in prison a couple times because of some of the things that I had done, and got out, and God got a hold of my life. Actually, the story is even colder. It's colder. It's cooler than that because there's a couple of brothers who God got a hold of them first.
Yep.
And that trickle-down effect, and how, man, Jesus changes one person in a family, that can just spread like wildfire. And he was like, well, best thing that happened is I came to church here with my brother, and just radical transformation. And you and I both had the opportunity to have conversations with this young man, and we were blown away, and just like, God is going to use him in massive ways. And so what might sound like the other opposite end of a testimony, like it's not instantaneous, but like a radical change of somebody younger in life. And that's amazing too. Like God changes lives in both of those ways.
Yeah.
And in everything in between.
Yep. And then some of the in between, we had 2 young kids get baptized, and both being raised in the church, and both wanting to follow Jesus.
And that's such a powerful story too, because sometimes people are like, oh, well, I wish I had more, I was older and, had more that I was turning from. I'm like, no. You give your life to Christ when you are young, and the amount of pain and heartache and regret that he is going to keep you from ever having to experience. And like the joy of knowing him from the time that you're, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old is, Yeah.
It was an incredible day. If you missed it and you want to hear those testimonies, you can find them on our YouTube channel. You can hear them give their testimony and see them get baptized.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Sorry, I got this little cough this morning. But it's not morning, actually. It's afternoon. I'm used to recording this in the morning. It is afternoon. We're a little behind schedule for the day. But it was a great day. And just seeing the way that God is moving in our church, and again, just bringing that back around, that's because of the gospel. It's because of the resurrection. It is not anything that we are doing. There's no secret sauce. There's no secret formulation. It is, hey, we have this message of Jesus Christ crucified, buried, risen, seen. Trust in him, you'll change your life. Yeah. And people are like, okay. And he does. So what a great Easter weekend, man.
Yep. Yeah, and that was seen across the nation.
Yes.
Lots of churches seeing record attendance, lots of record baptism numbers, people deciding to follow Jesus for the first time.
There is a hunger.
It's an exciting time to be part of the church and the move of God right now.
Yep. We'll wrap it there?
Yep.
All right. We can keep going if you want to, but I feel like that's a good place to just wrap it.
Put a little bow on it.
Put a bow.
All right, tune in next week to see if Phil is verklempt next week. What the word of the day is. Have a great week, everybody.